Good evening, you guys. This is your boy Bill Mahari here, representing Mahari Nation Sports Podcast on a very snowy, cold day in the city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Major salute to the entire LDBC and the basketball community. Just wanted to make a quick 10-minute video about a significant event that happened yesterday at Indiana. Bob Knight finally returned to Indiana for the first time in 20 years, as you guys can read under the description box. Um, I was watching the broadcast on ESPN yesterday, and it was a really surreal moment because you know for so many years, Bob Knight refused to come back to Indiana after he was dismissed in September 10th of 2000, following back-to-back incidents where he's assaulted his own players and a student. You understand what I'm saying? And he just was one of those hard strong, very iron willed type of people that vowed to his word he would never come back. And it looked like he was never going to come back because the university officials and also the athletic director by the name of Fred Glass tried so many years to try to help negotiate Bob Knight's return. And each time he turned it down. Um, it wasn't until last July where Bob Knight finally made an appearance at an Indiana baseball game where he had a huge standing ovation from the crowd. And when he finally agreed to return to Indiana at Assembly Hall, where he coached for 29 seasons, um, it was a huge surreal moment because the Indiana student section and all the players that played for under him for all these years finally got to have a chance to reminisce with their old coach. And basically, he did the famous defensive drills with former great Scott May. He hugged Hall of Famer Isiah Thomas, and he also reminisced with his good friend Dick Vitale, who works as a broadcaster for ESPN. So it was really a very touching moment for all people who loved Bob Knight. Now, when you look back at his legacy, Bob Knight perhaps is probably the top five. Some could argue say he could probably be the top three greatest coaches in the history of college basketball, based on how he was able to achieve his accomplishments with very less talented players. Now, he did have some good players. He had Isiah Thomas, who became a Hall of Famer, a two-time NBA champion. You understand? He also had Quinn Buckner, who was a very good defensive player and won an NBA title in '84 with the Boston Celtics. He also had Randy Whitman, who was an All-American, who also played in the NBA too. He also had Calbert Cheaney in the early '90s, who went on to be the Big Ten's all-time leading scorer and had a very good career in the NBA. So he's had some very good players, talented players per se, but he was able to achieve a lot more with a lot less because he never had the top five. He never really had I wouldn't say never. I would say he rarely had top four or top five-star recruits, come to Indiana because he was a very hard disciplinarian. You understand? Coming in from West Point. What's up, TJ Wilkins? How you doing, my man? And when he came into Indiana back in right around, I want to say it was back in 1971. Okay, he came in following his brief tenure with Army. He coached Army for 6 seasons. All right, and then he got the job at Indiana. And ironically, um, one of his players that he coached is now the coach of Duke University, Mike Krzyzewski. And right now, Krzyzewski is the all-time leader in career wins, surpassing his old mentor. Um, he was one of the first guys that introduced the motion offense, where you basically had to to use movement without the ball, pass several times to get an open shot. Now, it doesn't mean you can't shoot in Bob Knight's offense. When you get the green light from Bob Knight is that you can hit consistent perimeter jump shots on very consistently. Few guys have had the green light, like guys like Isiah Thomas or Steve Alford or Calvin Chaney, who can hit perimeter shots more consistently, that had Bob Knight's ultimate trust to hit shots. You understand? And no, he's not coming out of retirement. He's 79 years old. Nope, He ain't coming back. But no, um, when you look at his accomplishments, his all of his awards and accomplishments speak for itself. Um, he won 11 Big Ten regular season championships. Um, he also was the all-time leader in career victories with 902 career wins before Mike Krzyzewski broke that record a couple of years ago. He won 3 national championships in 76, 1981, and 1987. And here's another thing that people don't know about. Um, in 1976, he coached the last undefeated team to the national championship. Since then, there have been no other teams in this era that have went undefeated and won the national title. There's only been a few. John Wooden cheated at least 3 times in his coaching career at UCLA. So, and to think about it, in 1975, it was in a game against Purdue. Former All-American Scott May broke his arm, and Bob Knight has said that if Scott May didn't break his arm in 75, they would have went on to win 2 national championships going undefeated in both years. That's remarkable. And he continued his great coaching during the 80s too. He also coached Isiah Thomas for about 2 seasons and went on to win a national championship against Dean Smith in 1981 in the Spectrum in Philadelphia. All right. And he also coached the USA men's basketball team in '84 with Michael Jordan and Steve Alf and the rest of them guys, and famously cut Charles Barkley during the tryouts, and went on to win the gold medal for the United States. And there was no denying that this guy had a great career as a coach. And also, he won the title in '87, which also featured the great Keith Smart game winner in the '87 title game against Syracuse. But we cannot talk about Bob Knight's legacy without mentioning his dark side. He was a guy that, was obsessed of power and control and was verbally and physically abusive towards his players, administrators, faculty, staff, and even to the president of the university. All right. So the thing about with Bob Knight is this: Bob Knight, is going to go down as one of the most controversial figures in sports history. He did a lot of good, but there was also a lot of bad into it. And when you watch the 30 for 30 documentary that was released last year, it detailed a lot of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes in Assembly Hall. And then when you also got the footage about when when CNN was able to obtain the footage of him choking Neil Reed in practice, it was probably the worst thing. It was probably the worst thing that could happen to Indiana for everybody. But it really casts a light about who Bob Knight was as a person. He was an angry, intolerant man that wanted control more than anything else. And because of that, he was dismissed as coach of Indiana. And he went on to coach Texas Tech until 2008, where he became the all-time leader in victories until, like I said, Mike Krzyzewski broke that record. For so many years, the Indiana University and many of his former players have tried so hard to bring him back to the campus that made his career. But he refused and declined every single time until yesterday when he finally walked into the Assembly Hall and received a standing ovation, and with the crowd, chanting his name. It was kind of the first time that I could remember seeing Knight finally showing vulnerability, finally showing contrarian and emotion. Because, there was a lot of people that really believed that Bob Knight was going to hold this anger and resentment towards the university to his deathbed. And recently, in the last couple of years, he's not been in good health. I've read some articles saying that he's not been in great health. He's not been his body's beginning to fail on him. So it was really, really enlightening to see finally that Coach Knight finally was able to let this beef go and basically get his just due and his respect that he's deserved all this time. You understand? Now, again, this does not excuse the behavior that he did during his time, because that is going to be part of his legacy, regardless of what anyone else thinks. But I think for now, we can finally say that Bob Knight finally returned home, and he can basically leave this world knowing that he finally got the respect and the admiration that he'd been seeking for all his life. And for me, as a basketball fan, and as a person that studies, the game of basketball all these years, I've seen, countless controversial figures in my time. I think this is probably one of the best heartwarming stories that you can finally say that finally they can put everything else to rest. And hopefully that now next generation of, basketball figureheads like myself can finally have research with a clear head about who Bob Knight was and what he brought to the game. But you cannot deny the other side of him that also made him what he was. So it is what it is, though, guys. But I wanted to come down alive for you guys and give you some of that news about it, though, too, guys. I just felt it was a really surreal moment for everybody that knew him and basically, understood what he became. So I'll be back at later on at 7 o'clock. We're gonna get into the Kobe Bryant stuff, a little bit later on this channel, though, guys. So make sure to hit the like button and share the video too, guys. I'll see you guys later on tonight.